In conclusion, the message for this week is simple. Do not resist, let the change unfold, because right after the storm clears, the freest and most authentic version of yourself will emerge.
There is an undeniable heavy friction vibrating in the ether right now. Even before the calendar dates fully lock into place, a silent, subterranean pressure has been building within the collective psyche. This is not the kind of stress born from a busy schedule. It is an existential weight. You might have noticed it over the past few days, an erratic wave of restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., a profound sense of emotional exhaustion that sleep cannot fix, or a sharp, almost unsettling spike in your intuitive perception. Suddenly, moments of absolute, piercing clarity are immediately followed by thick fog and uncertainty. It feels as though the very fabric of our reality is shifting its weight, preparing for a massive tectonic movement. Those who are highly sensitive, empathic, or naturally tuned to the subtler frequencies of life can already sense that this period carries an ominous yet sacred significance. Let us be entirely honest. This is not ordinary cosmic weather. This is the kind of energetic crucible that leaves no room for hiding. It is designed with one specific purpose: to force every single hidden emotion, every suppressed truth, every toxic compromise, and every unresolved behavioral pattern to rise, screaming into our conscious awareness, whether we feel spiritually prepared to face them or not.
When we use a term as violent as bone-crushing, our immediate instinct, born entirely out of fear, is to imagine catastrophe, ruin, and external destruction. But the universe rarely operates on the low vibrational frequency of human panic. The grand illusion: a bone-crushing period does not come to destroy your life. It comes to crush the illusions you have mistaken for your life. It generates a psychological pressure so intense, so unrelenting, that the fragile glass houses of our emotional self-deception can no longer withstand the weight. It exposes the hidden fractures in our foundations and forces us into the fires of transformation that we have delayed, avoided, and bargained our way out of for years. Look closely at the collective human condition. Most people do not actually live, they emotionally survive. They spend decades trapped in stagnant routines, repeating the exact same cyclical heartbreaks, silencing the screaming voice of their intuition, and settling for a comfortable, low-grade emotional numbness. They willingly suppress their deepest truths just to maintain external comfort and avoid rocking the boat. But the universe is a self-correcting organism. Eventually, life brings us to an energetic tipping point where the pain of remaining static becomes infinitely more agonizing than the pain of evolution. That is exactly what this current window represents: a head-on high-speed collision between raw emotional truth and stubborn emotional resistance. If you have been feeling emotionally heavier, highly irritable, or strangely defensive lately without any logical explanation, understand that you are not losing your mind. You are experiencing the quickening of awareness. Before any major psychological or spiritual shift unfolds, the internal senses sharpen dramatically. Right now, a massive collective purgation is taking place in the dark. Years of accumulated toxic debris, veiled anger, ancient grief, unvoiced boundaries, and systemic burnout are all being pushed upward at once. During this acceleration of the invisible forces, your internal compass is going haywire in the best way possible as you begin to notice your physical body reacting to people and environments long before your logical mind even has time to process the data, manifesting as a sudden tightening in your stomach, or a sharp spike in your heart rate, or conversely, an instant wave of relief washing over your soul, which serves as proof that your discernment is being upgraded to a whole new level. Within these unique energetic windows, Time itself seems to compress and warp so that months or even years of deep internal psychological processing are crammed and resolved into a matter of days, which is precisely why you are likely noticing an absurd and almost unbelievable amount of synchronicities unfolding all around you. You are tracing the blueprint of numbers by catching repeating numerical patterns, like 1111, 222, 444, or 555 every single time. You glance at a clock, experiencing the perfect catalyst of timing through spontaneous conversations with absolute strangers that flawlessly answer an internal question you have never told a soul, and navigating the profound language of the deep with vivid dreams loaded with intense, heavy, and unforgettable symbolism, because the universe always speaks at maximum volume when reality is aggressively trying to shift you out of a dead-end path. The most terrifying aspect of this current energy is the profound sense of detachment you may feel toward your own past. You look in the mirror or you look at your daily life, and the roles you used to play so comfortably now feel like a costume that is 3 sizes too small. The habits, the mindless routines, the superficial social circles, or the professional identities that once felt completely normal suddenly feel utterly hollow. Do not panic when this vacuum occurs. This emotional emptiness is not depression. It is the natural consequence of rapid spiritual growth. Your frequency is changing, which means your compatibility with your past identity has expired. However, because the human ego craves familiarity over freedom, this transition often triggers intense anxiety before the clarity can stabilize. You will find your nervous system highly sensitive. Certain environments will drain your battery within seconds. Certain superficial or dishonest people will suddenly feel like sandpaper to your soul. The truth is rising, and it is moving too fast to stop. It is bringing heavy revelations about your relationships, your true soul purpose, and the deep emotional imbalances you have tolerated for far too long. It is forcing you to look at your shadow, your tendencies to overgive to people who only take, your tendencies to choose emotional avoidance, and your history of making life-altering decisions based entirely on the fear of scarcity and abandonment. We are currently witnessing a massive and silent divergence unfolding within the collective consciousness, as a definitive line in the sand is being drawn between 2 entirely different human experiences. On one side of this sacred split, those choosing the awakening are willingly leaning into the intense discomfort of growth by practicing radical honesty, embracing the agonizing yet necessary pain of shedding their old skin and moving directly toward authentic healing. While on the other side, those trapped in resistance are doubling down on deep denial by fighting tooth and nail to protect their fragile illusions, and consequently becoming emotionally heavier, more bitter, and increasingly chaotic because of it. This profound collective polarization will make you highly intolerant of any manipulation, gaslighting, or superficiality, as your entire biological and spiritual system begins demanding raw authenticity over empty performance and real internal peace over mere emotional survival. Yes, this period will absolutely feel like a terrifying ego collapse, because your old coping mechanisms are breaking apart at the seams, while your body is forced to process years of stored emotional trauma all at once, triggering physical symptoms such as profound fatigue, erratic sleep cycles, splitting headaches, or a heavy crushing sensation in your chest, which are simply the tangible ways your physical body translates a massive spiritual upgrade into material form. But you must remember that what feels like an emotional execution is actually a profound spiritual reconstruction, because endings are never a punishment from an angry universe, but are rather supreme acts of cosmic liberation disguised as painful loss, meaning that when a door slams shut in your face during a heavy transit like this, it is only because that specific doorway was leading you straight back into a prison of your own making. While this energetic storm spares absolutely no one, it is hitting the fixed signs with surgical precision as Aquarius and Scorpio find themselves standing directly in the absolute epicenter of this cosmic crucible, demanding a highly specific and tactical approach because your inherent energies are naturally stubborn and fiercely resistant to externally forced change. For Aquarius, whose diagnosis reveals that the metaphorical ice wall is rapidly melting, your absolute favorite survival mechanism during times of emotional chaos is intellectual detachment, because you are a master at taking your deepest feelings, placing them inside a mental petri dish, and analyzing them with cold scientific objectivity as if they belong to an entirely different person. Instead of actually feeling your pain, you choose to think your pain by constructing a magnificent, complex mental architecture to justify your emotional isolation while proudly wearing the badge of the outsider or the lonely soul. But during this heavy transit, the universe is going to smash your intellectual shield into dust because you simply cannot think your way out of a bone-crushing week. Your action plan requires you to strictly forbid the mental postmortem so that when a wave of sadness, anger, or existential dread hits you, you must stop trying to analyze why, cease writing a thesis about it in your head, and completely stop rationalizing it, choosing instead to sit on the floor, close your eyes, and let the raw physical sensation of the emotion wash over your nervous system, even if it means weeping without needing a single logical reason for your tears. Furthermore, you must dismantle the "I don't care" facade by dropping the cool, detached persona you often use to pretend you are completely unaffected by rejection or misalignment, forcing yourself to admit in the absolute privacy of your own mind exactly where you are hurting, where you feel lonely, and where you desperately crave deep, authentic connection. Finally, you must step forward to speak the unfiltered truth by overcoming your habit of using abstract concepts, humor, or sarcasm to deflect from your real feelings, meeting your ultimate challenge to choose raw authenticity over performance by looking at someone you care about or someone who has crossed your boundaries and stating your vulnerable, unpolished truth without any intellectual fluff or emotional editing, simply saying, "This hurts me," or "I need help." For Scorpio, whose critical diagnosis dictates that your white-knuckle grip must finally release, you are certainly no stranger to the dark, intense waters of emotional crises, because you practically live in those depths. Yet your primary shadow trait during a spiritual storm is an obsessive need for total control. The moment you feel threatened or sense that things are shifting outside of your comfort zone, your immediate instinct is to grip the reins even tighter by attempting to control the narrative, manipulate your environment, orchestrate the outcome behind the scenes, and hide your deepest vulnerabilities behind a stone-cold wall of secrecy and power. You are currently exhausting your power trying to sustain situations, ancient grudges, or dying relationship dynamics that actually met a natural spiritual death months ago, treating them as if they were on a life support machine, when, in reality, the universe is pulling the plug this week. Your direct action plan demands that you practice radical surrender by letting it burn, remembering that while you are the eternal archetype of the phoenix, you cannot experience a glorious resurrection if you are constantly fighting to keep the decaying corpse of your old life alive, meaning that if a relationship is collapsing, a project is failing, or an illusion is shattering, you must simply let it drop without plotting how to fix it, salvage it, or avenge it, choosing instead to open your hands, step back, and watch it burn with absolute trust that the resulting ashes are clearing necessary space for your future alignment. Next, you must weaponize your boundaries rather than your anger, because your nervous system is likely experiencing a massive influx of suppressed rage and deep physical fatigue, which means you must refuse to turn this volatile energy inward as self-sabotage or project it outward as a venomous attack on others, utilizing it instead to construct ironclad, non-negotiable boundaries by delivering a clean, absolute no to anyone or anything that drains your spirit without feeling the slightest need to explain or justify your decision. Finally, you must actively choose sacred solitude over toxic obsession, because when the pressure peaks, your toxic instinct will be to hyperfixate on an external trigger like an ex, a rival, or a perceived injustice, requiring you to break the spell by forcing yourself into deep, reflective solitude, where you disconnect from social media, retreat into nature, or sit in absolute silence, so that your nervous system can complete its job of reorganizing your entire energetic frequency around a higher level of self-worth within a quiet sanctuary.